benefits of ESG are now widely accepted across alternatives. What would you change to make ESG more useful and effective?
That's an easy one. Data.
The biggest challenge when it comes to ESG is really coming up with a consistent definition, right, of what ESG is and what adherence to ESG would entail and require. And so, to me, it's really just more clarity with respect to the rules of the playground. I think that would go a long way in advancing the integration of ESG into investment processes in a way that has not happened up until this point.
What I would change to make it more useful and effective would probably be the movement towards a more uniform reporting of the data.
Just putting in place clear, consistent regulations, and particularly when it comes to producing industry ESG regulation, like even if intended to mitigate greenwashing and the risk of greenwashing, it can in fact amplify greenwashing risks, particularly if the regulation is based on unclear product boundaries or classification systems.
On the industry level, there needs to be a bit more standardization.
ESG we talk about as if it's a single risk factor. It is a bundle of hundreds of individual risks.
Qualitative information can only get you so far. It's time to quantify, because if you can't count it, you can't change it. This will be a major shift, but there are some big names and alternatives throwing their hats in the ring to come together as a catalyst for private market ESG data transparency adoption.
The opportunity to make a difference in the environment, in social equity, and certainly in governance is going to be huge.
In the public markets, there's plenty of data out there. I think in the private markets where alternatives are typically operating, it's not as easy to get access to this data. And, in some cases, just the willingness to provide certain data. So I think once we move to more consistency and, private market firms sharing this data will lead to better reporting. It will just continue to evolve.
ESG is more about mindset than ticking boxes. ESG is a process, not an outcome, and it starts with being truthful and transparent. I think when we start to see more engagement between LPs and GPs on ESG, it will start to become more real.
The ability to link ESG metrics and data to specific financial outcomes will be important, as allocators will want to see GPs demonstrate ESG performance. And of course, there are political headwinds fighting against this, but we are indeed seeing a lot of pressure from LPs who are putting pressure on GPs to improve on climate, diversity, and similar topics.
In many other industries, there are some kind of there's a standards guide. Something like that is really needed in the ESG space. So we make sure investors are clear that all institutions or all GPs are following the same rules, and not just reporting rules, but also when, in terms of screening deals, in terms of monitoring deals and so on, that these rules are standard across the whole industry.
AIMA and its members are increasingly focused on the management of climate-related risks to which their investments are exposed. And as such, the industry is heavily reliant on the availability of consistent and comparable disclosures to be able to analyze and manage those risks. So we believe then there is a need to focus on the standardization of sustainability-related corporate disclosure, as currently this is a key constraint for firms when managing and disclosing ESG risks.
Who's responsible for the scope 3 emissions, the emissions that come out of the supply chain? So these are not direct or indirect or anyone's business model, but this is where all the action is. This is where all the emissions are happening. This is where all the greenhouse gases are happening. And nobody wants to take ownership for this. I think perhaps ultimately the right answer might be it's all of us. It's me, it's all of you. We are the very last mile with the consumers of every single product out there. And unless we're willing to both vote with our feet and be somewhat inconvenienced as human beings, we're simply not going to solve this.
With a small company, it's very hard to establish something like a carbon footprint or a carbon index and deciding on how big is that footprint, where is it going, how do you measure it? For non-public, non-rated companies that don't necessarily have access to the public markets, this is a challenge, and yet it's such a huge opportunity, because if you can impact at the local levels with these companies in terms of their ESG focus, that impact can be felt not only with the investors in those specific companies, and the employees of those companies, and the jurisdictions around those companies, but also, frankly, in our portfolios.
It will be very important over time that there be an enhancement and a development of the tools to help improve the understanding of material ESG inputs into every level of investment process.